So not only did Rebels in this past week, they had the series finale or whatever. According to Time Hop, it was also my anniversary for my online Twitter feud with Freddie Prinze Jr., Jay. You remember that? You remember experiencing that with me?
It's one of my favorite things that's ever happened to you.
Is it really? That? The Freddie Prinze Jr. thing?
Yeah, it's pretty absurd. It's pretty ridiculous.
It's also because I think you could probably relate to Freddie in that scenario, right? How many times have we had terrible texting conversations?
That's one of, I don't know how many like catchphrases you have, but I
have a lot of catchphrases.
One of my catchphrases for you is that Ryan Snelling is a terrible texter. So
that's not a catchphrase. That's just a description.
Any phrase that's used constantly can be coined as a catchphrase. I didn't know I was going to make the catchphrase, or there was going to be a catchphrase of "it's just a thing," but Ilya ended up making a fucking meme about it. So I don't even know.
That is a catchphrase. So is "What's up, sweaties?" For those of you who don't know, you might be a new listener. Yes, I had a Twitter feud with Freddie Prinze Jr. I tweeted at him one night because I was so frustrated with the distribution of Star Wars Rebels. It's one of the hardest shows to watch if you don't have Disney XD. So I tweeted at him, and this is like word for word, at Freddie Prinze Jr. Why is it so hard to watch Star Wars Rebels? I woke up the next morning. If you don't like the show, don't watch the show, man.
You know what? I get it, Freddie. I've been there before.
And I was like, no, man, no. I was talking about the distribution. He goes, why would I have anything to do with the distribution? Did you just want to tweet at me just to say hello? Yeah? Okay, well then just say hello. That's how the interaction went. But it's all good now. We're a few years removed from it. He has no idea who I am. I did send him a peace offering in the mail, and that seemed to quiet everything down, so it's all good.
Freddie Prinze Jr., one of the few individuals, well, not necessarily true. In fact, we're probably going to talk about another person that shares this characteristic, somebody that crosses over between Collider and the Schmoedown family and The Fighter and the Kid, which is one of my favorite podcasts. Listen, before we go any further, I just need to bring something up. I'm sure it's probably in your rundown. I had this revelation that one time when I basically gave a call to action to people to do something at the top of the show, and they rewarded us by actually doing it instead of waiting till the very end. I just needed to let people know that we put out a video earlier this week, okay? And I know there's far more people that listen to our show than have watched that video. So if you just completely didn't know that we have put out a video this week on SK Plus where you see our faces, you need to check that out.
You were supposed to ask me what my peace offering was.
It was probably a Sight and Sound shirt that never got to him because it's in the back of Mark's car.
No, you ruined my joke. And it also happened at the end of the Town Hall video, which, again, you should go watch on SK Plus. I don't think you finished your point. Your point was ultimately that we are on video all the time, yet we got comments as if people had never seen our faces before.
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, I think it was a revelation of how many newer people we have that check out the show. But even if you've only been checking out the show for a week, you should at least know that we have another channel called Sight and Sound where you can literally see our faces multiple days a week. So that exists too.
We have a lot to get to. Let's start it. Welcome to After Schmoe. It's going to be a big one today. There's so much to talk about. It's like the longest Google Doc. This is the most Google Doc'd I've been going into the show. My name is Ryan Snelling, and you know Jaye Williams. What's up, man?
That's me. I mentioned it at the top of the show. You can always head on over to Sight and Sound and see our faces. And you can also check out Ryan's fantastic Parkway Drive reaction video that he did.
God.
It's one of my favorite things that's ever happened in our existence. Listen, here's what I want to address at the top of the show. R.I.P. Harloff Carpool. I don't know where it's gone. We haven't gotten an explanation of where it's gone. It's living right now in the retirement home with Don't Be a Beardo and JT movie thinks sometimes. Where's Carpool at?
It was probably in the clause. I think Fernandez had asked him to politely shut it down after the transition period.
Maybe it belongs to Complex, and we never knew.
Right. I mean, at the beginning of that journey with Carpool, I questioned if it could be sustained or not, and I personally got over it because it was a lot of Schmoedown talk, and that didn't really involve me anymore. And for anybody who's questioning my Schmoedown fandom, I love the Schmoedown. I watch every single match, but I only care about the match itself. I have a lot of fun watching the events, like the Spectacular. I sat and watched all of Schmoedown Spectacular 2 in one sitting, all 6 hours, every single bit of it. I love it, but I don't listen to Rundown, all the belts. I'm not as involved as some other people, so I didn't need that for Carpool. So I'm not acting like I miss Carpool, but I know he still had his audience, so there are plenty of people that are probably asking that just like you are.
You would categorize yourself as a casual Schmoedown fan. Well,
I don't know, man. I watch every single one, and I mean I love the Schmoedown. I just don't need to engulf myself in the Schmoedown like and some people get a kick out of it, and that's great. I mean, I was diehard into WWE in the late 90s and things like that, so I get it. There are so many other things that I'm paying attention to that the Schmoedown just isn't on my priority list, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's an interesting time right now. Listen, we're not here to talk about the Schmoedown. There's another show that does that, but regardless, I think it is important to at least touch on the fact that we're approaching this live event, this live show, which I think is kind of a pivotal point in not only the Schmoedown's history, but let's just say this thing does take off and it is a success, and they start planning more of these. I mean, you know, how much. How different are things going to look if they're planning live events and this and that? I think it's fascinating, and I hope that it is successful, but I am curious to know what that's like. Actually, this is a good sort of transition topic because I wanted to bring this up in our video with Christian focusing more than ever on the Schmoedown than he's sort of ever done before, and rightfully so because he has the Patreon now. People are, you know, investing their hard-earned money into believing in the Schmoedown. But he's also has this new title. He has this new role. He is, you know, partially responsible along with everybody else there, but also Mark Fernandez in ushering Collider in this new era. I wonder if that's sort of stressful for him. What do you think?
Well, for one, I'm kind of shocked that they've only sold, if I do the math, they've only sold about 250 of the 300 tickets. And I thought it would be a lot more than that based on the fact that when they were at Star Wars Celebration, I think that room fit like 500 or 600, and they had to turn so many people away. So I think I'm fitting pieces together here. I think some of this information has been spread out on Collider through varying videos, but I heard that this venue seats 300, and I think today they said there's 50 tickets left. So I was a little surprised by that. Maybe people are waiting too long to buy their tickets because we are a week out from that event. But I don't know, because they brought up even in the town hall, and I've heard this for a long time. They've thought about touring with all of their other shows, Movie Talk, whatever. And so I just don't know what that looks like yet. And going back to your original point, I think we're at least another year or so, unless this Schmoedown just, you know, blows the roof off the place. I still think we're like a year away from them actually being able to take this out on the road. That's just me.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I'll pull back the curtain a little bit. I don't think I've ever really gotten into this on After Schmoe, but and you know this obviously, but I have a background in promoting concerts and events and live events and whatnot. And the venue size, I think, is actually perfect for a first event. A 300 cap room is ideal. I think it's tough to use Star Wars Celebration as a measuring stick, considering the fact that, as far as I know, I mean, I don't think that event cost any money to actually go to the Schmoedown. Am I misinformed in that regard? Like I think you could have just stood in line and gotten in for free, right?
Right. It didn't cost anything specifically to get into the Schmoedown at that particular point. The other factors that people go to Star Wars Celebration from all over the world, whereas this Schmoedown is restricted to the LA area. But even so, it's LA, you know.
You look at the personalities involved. Not that obviously there's some big matches at this live Schmoedown. You've got at least at Star Wars Celebration, you had the Jedi Council cast and crew who were there, who obviously have their built-in fan base already. You had Jeremy Johns was there, who obviously has a massive audience as well. Sam Witwer, a character in Star Wars history and canon. So, I think there's a lot of factors playing into that. Where I would be interested in seeing how a live Schmoedown event plays out is when you have a full stacked card, a quote-unquote pay-per-view style event, a free-for-all in a live setting. That's where I think the Schmoedown Live can really, really take off. And obviously doing that is a little bit of a risk because, it's a very important event, but you also, if you're doing it live, you want people to be there. And, I guess they just sort of have to hedge their bets with that.
So I think if they were going to tour with the Schmoedown or with Movie Talk, I don't think they would have a problem with LA, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, some of those bigger cities in Texas. But it just entirely depends on what touring looks like, what Christian and Fernandez have in mind with that, because they could also do some kind of version of, okay, let's go to a big city on Friday, but then it's like, are they going to spend the entire weekend there? They're not just going to Chicago for a Friday and then coming right back. And I can't see all of those people spending an entire weekend and doing that multiple times in a year. Like, there's probably just a ton of factors that we're not able to consider at this point. That's why I feel safe saying, like, I still think we're a year out from doing full-blown touring.
Right. So if I'm looking at it and just using what knowledge I have of doing events and whatnot, if it were me, I would not book my own shows. I would not play promoter in that regard. I wouldn't be Christian and say, well, let's go to Chicago. Let me set up the venue in Chicago. Let me make sure all the promotion gets done in Chicago.
Yeah.
I would contact people across the country who want me to come there, promoters in remote locations, maybe comic book shop owners or whatever the case may be, whoever knows a built-in audience for things like that potentially, and contact them, and then you put the responsibility on them. That they foot the bill, maybe they take the profits at the door, whatever the case may be, but they're also responsible for promoting it because they're familiar with the landscape of their local area.
So I think maybe Ellis could help in that regard when it comes, because he has 100%. An agent. He's worked colleges and universities before on stand-up. So I bet there are some contacts that he could be of some service to. I'm thinking of, like, here in Louisville, we have Terry Harper, who's a big-time promoter. He books all of the really big, like, metal and rock bands that come through here. So you're talking about someone like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's weird because in music, they're sort of few and far between these days.
Right.
So many. It's different. Different venues have their own promoters and this and that. But obviously, comedy is one that it's still clubs. It's still the venues themselves are doing the promoting. And I know there's no Schmoedown venues around the world specifically, but you never know, man. Collider has a ton of fans out there who might have experience in this. Like if I don't know if I have time to do this, but if Christian called me up and said, "Hey, set me up a show in Lexington, Kentucky," I can guarantee you I would have at least 300 people there, no questions asked.
Oh,
sold
easily,
out.
Easily.
There is no question
easily
in my mind that could happen.
Yeah, for sure. All the people that we know from playing music here and stuff like that, yeah, easily.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we're plugged into some of the like fan communities around here that like at least movies and whatnot. It might even be a lot of first-time people. Especially if you
Right.
book in something like that with with stand-up comedy. You get Mark Ellis to come out, do a few yucks, maybe some local comedians as well. Maybe have a band. I don't know.
Again, there is a lot to talk about today, so we might, at the risk of leaving out Harloff and Ellis, we will at least touch on it, but I don't know for how much because there's just a lot going on here. But if you guys, again, wanted to hear our reaction from the town hall, we accomplished that already in a video. It's called the After Schmoe special. It's on SK Plus right now. So we're not going to do a whole lot of town hall here because we've already done it. It's a 30-minute video, pretty lengthy. And thank you to everyone who's watched that, by the way. We got a lot of great comments. I think people are getting a lot out of that video that Jay and I did. I said it in the video, don't get used to After Schmoe videos because that was sort of in the middle of the week. We did it outside of our After Schmoe schedule. It's almost midnight. We're recording this right after I get off work, and Jay's got to be up early, and so video is not convenient for us at this time on After Schmoe proper. Excuse me, but anyway, I do think a lot of people are enjoying the videos, so thank you if you've watched it and commented and all that good stuff. But I did want to bring up a point that I left out of the video, and it's in regards to the podcast network. And this actually came up because I actually got in Jedi Council before tonight, and I rarely get to do that. But going back to the echo that's in the studio, I know that they're working on it. They acknowledged it. We all know that it's a thing. I don't think they should start the podcast network while they have the echo in the studio for just professionalism's sake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's weird though because listen, obviously we do our shows, and I'm sitting in a room right now that has, sound foam on the wall, but I don't even think it does anything. You are sitting in a room that doesn't have sound foam on the wall.
I have a slight echo. I can hear it when I edit our podcasts.
Yeah, I do wonder how much of it could potentially be fixed with equipment and new microphones and different microphones. I don't know, though. You'd have to ask Beardo for that. But regardless,
I don't know.
One thing that I wanted to tack onto that conversation, we sort of talked about it off air, and you kind of touched on it a little bit with like, oh, maybe we'll run out of time for Harloff and Ellis. With all this new stuff that's being introduced into Collider, or that will be introduced in Collider, we still have a responsibility to cover all things Collider, but we kind of talked about it a little bit off air, and I think the way to do it moving forward is sort of how we've treated it thus far, is just pick out the highlights. There was one iteration of the show where you did go through a lot of things step by step. I don't think we've ever done that since I've been on the show.
Well, I mean, not only is there a responsibility, and I think Fernandez and Christian, I think there are definitely people that like that we do this, and I'm totally fine with it because right now there is a ton to talk about always, and it's exciting. We've talked about our excitement for everything going on at Collider, but it's also the fact that even before this transitional period, even that we played it up on this show, but there's only so much you can do with Harloff and Ellis, and sometimes that show isn't even there at all. So I've sort of gotten used to not relying on the recap portion of After Schmoe. Like, I have my notes here and things that we could talk about, but it's not, to me, not nearly as interesting as everything else is that involves Collider. So that's just me. I mean, we'll touch on it, but don't be surprised if we just fly through it, because
the live show coming back will be interesting because I expect to recap the live show like we've always recapped the live show.
Well, yeah, that's the live show.
It's just kind of funny though, because we're going to have that, which is a huge chunk of content to discuss.
Yeah.
And I'm eager and excited to talk about it. But this other stuff too to break down. I'm having a lot of fun. Right now getting into the minutia and the details and the inner workings of everything going on with Collider. And I sort of tweeted about it this week. It just seems like this week specifically, they've just given us these gifts to talk about on this show. And it's been nice.
They did not mention the Schmoedown live show at all. during the town hall, which is interesting. They're still playing coy. They're still acting like we're big dummies over here at After Schmoe. But I swear to Zeus, even though they've got the lids zipped up, It's coming back. All right. So something that Jay and I have never, ever talked about, our good buddy Ben Rayner, a longtime listener, fellow Schmoevillian, he called us out. He said, guys, why don't you all talk about Mailbag? And I sat there, read the comment, and thought about it, and then I said, look, I have nothing to say about Mailbag other than, okay, they're standing now. Very good. But I did see you respond to this comment, yes. So I do know that you have a little bit to say about Mailbag. So what do you got?
Well, he's right. We haven't really talked about Mailbag, and I sort of took that as a challenge. Listen, when I do album reviews on Sight and Sound, there are albums that I've heard a million times, but it's a different experience when you listen to those albums with a reviewer's ear, so to speak, and you're sort of finally combing your way through all the details. So I did that with Mailbag this week, and I let my mind sort of run wild. Now, knowing what we know now about where Collider's going moving forward and this and that and some of the things that Mark Fernandez had to say on the town hall, Mailbag, in my opinion, is a sleeping giant on the Collider and the Collider content pool, and here's why. That fan interaction, the fan sort of back and forth that not just Collider is looking for, but so many places yearn for that. They yearn for that conversation with the audience, because if the audience is helping to drive the conversation, it makes doing the show a lot easier. I think that show would not only be perfect in a podcast format to do even more consistently.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, you get it twice a week anyways. Are they still doing it on Saturday and Sunday?
To my knowledge, I can check real quick as you continue.
So there's that. However, I do think part of the show could be a little bit finely tuned, in my opinion. First of all, I like the fact that we get the likes of Riley on the show and people that just we don't get to see all the time, and then they sort of have a rotating cast and this and that. I don't want that anymore with the show. I think I think Mailbag needs a host. I think Mailbag needs a personality. You're not just going to the show specifically for the questions and the conversations that are going on, but you're going there because you love person X. You love their take on things. You love their whatever hot takes, their personal opinions, their animated characteristics, and this and that. It needs a host and a quote-unquote guest that it can be a rotating spot to come in and have these movie conversations. It needs to be somebody that's well-versed in film, and this, maybe not necessarily all film, but just is well-versed in talking about film. And I think that show, if you were to treat it like a sort of a late-night talk show, just where the conversation is guided by the fans, I think it would be absolutely fantastic. And I think the questions can be truncated a little bit, right? So maybe have a few that are quick fire, rapid fire questions, and then maybe you go to a few big discussion topics, and then you have like just one random one that's just where you can sort of just speculate and have a lot of fun. That's where you talk about like, oh, where do you want to see Star Wars in 10 years? I think there's so much potential in Mailbag, just in a different version than what it exists today.
I agree with the fine tuning. It feels like I'm not saying it feels sloppy in the sense that it's terrible, but sometimes they're goofy on the show. Like, oh, I guess we moved to this TV now, as opposed to knowing that they need to walk over to the next TV. Maybe I'm being unfair because that might have been the very first. That was a Mailbag that I just dropped in on like a week or two ago, and that might have actually been the first time that they had done that. So, I mean, that's on me if I'm mixing that up, but it did feel a little bit goofy, or maybe it was the first time that said person had done that before. I like the idea. I was looking at the thumbnails, and again, to validate, they are doing it Saturday and Sunday. I thought that was the case. I like the idea of instead of having it be like a mailbag on the thumbnail, I was imagining Perry's mailbag, and Perry was the set person. And the reason why I picked Perry is, for one, she's just always on point with everything ever. And I, was thinking back to the fact that she used to drive the behind-the-scenes show. So if you wanted to give Perry something else, it could be Perry's mailbag. And as you were talking, it was kind of funny because I started this conversation thinking I have nothing to say towards mailbag, but there can always be an improvement or a change. And if everything else is going to be changed, why not look at mailbag? So that was a good point.
And I like mailbag. I like the way it is now. I just think that there is a lot of potential, especially.
Well, I mean, there's not a whole lot to, even though I might have said that there's not a whole lot to say about it, there's not a whole lot you can get wrong about it.
Right.
I mean, even if I didn't have anything to expand on with mailbag, what does anyone have to say that's bad about mailbag? I mean, it is, the video is the video. It's just reading mailbag questions and giving your takes. So, I mean, there's just not a whole lot you can mess up here, but I do like the idea of having a host, I think they kind of do that. It seems like when I watch it, it's mostly Perry and maybe Dennis or maybe Riley or whatever. So I don't know if it's solidified that said person is the weekly host, but it's never Christian or Ellis, really, right? So.
Right, and that's sort of what and this, I'm not trying to be disparaging to anybody necessarily, but I think there are people who are better contributors, and there are people that are better hosts of things, just to where you can be really quick on the draw. I mean, we talked about how great Ellis is on Movie Talk at just throwing in little quick quips and this and that, little tags and jokes, and that's fantastic. I think it needs somebody with that sort of late night host sort of personality that can sit down and expand on questions for people when they're about to answer them, just to take things in different directions and this and that. Not that the people on there currently can't do that. That's not what I'm saying. I feel like if we take it with a different approach, just to have it be entertaining in that sort of regard, to where you are there for the character, as well as the conversation, I think that would just be very beneficial to the show.
I just had an amazing idea.
I already know what your idea is. Go ahead.
What if, let's say you put Perry behind a desk. I know this takes away from the, let's stand up and, walk from TV to TV. But let's say
this isn't where I thought you were going with this. Go ahead.
You thought I was going to say I should host the show.
Yes, I did. That's 100% what I thought.
Well, if you guys didn't know, David Letterman is my icon.
The second I said late night host, I knew that I had triggered you.
I would be honored to host Mailbag, but it doesn't have to be me. I like the idea of hosting, like you said, like a late night show. I was thinking about the fact that you have Ellis, you have Schnapp, and you have Christian, who host the big three at Collider, yes. Right? Imagine if those people didn't have to. Imagine if their conversations on the channel weren't so reliant on news. Imagine if Christian was sitting at home, or if Ellis was sitting at home, or Schnepp was sitting at home, and they rewatched The Thing, or that's the movie that Christian's still never seen. If Christian went home and saw The Thing, what if Christian on a Mailbag show came on and provided some kind of take on The Thing, this is why this is the best horror movie ever, and they could have a conversation like that couldn't exist anywhere else on Collider, because not only does that not fit in with anything that Mailbag or Movie Talk does or Jedi Council does, but even when they do a Collider news or just some random should the Oscars include superhero movies, anytime Collider does an outside the box video like that, it's still never random. It's still not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I think I would love to see Collider develop some sort of around the horn type of show in that regard, where it's just these really, really quick takes on exactly what you're talking about. Should the Oscars feature superhero movies, and just have people have their takes and and this and that. It's hard to do that show without
Yeah.
legitimately just ripping it off, but I would love to see a show like that on Collider.
I was trying to avoid the conversations that they would have on any other show at any given day, though. But I get what you're saying.
I hear you. Yeah, using that as an example.
Yeah, you're still speaking more towards the formatting and everything. So
yeah.
But yeah, I would love to host the show. But anyway,
we know.
But that was a way better conversation about mailbag than I ever thought.
I told you off air. I said, Ryan, I have got a great. I don't know what I said. I said something like, I've got a fantastic conversation. How dare you doubt
Yeah, but
me?
there's a lot of organic conversation to that too. I just came up with that on the spot. I didn't know that I had all that in me.
Yeah, you did pretty good.
You and I have talked a lot about, because you and I talk about this with Sight and Sound. We have applied this criticism to Collider. We've talked about doing more with less. And
yes.
As things have been sort of rolling out the past week or so, we had an off-air conversation. We think that they are applying that philosophy here. And I know that they have every intention of increasing their staff. Fernandez wants like 50 people by the end of the year, and that's great. But right now, they are doing more with less. I mean, I have seen so many different types of videos just come back, right? Like, for one, they've just kicked it into high gear when it comes to having celebrities come into the studio. Like, we haven't seen the video yet, but they did one with Tommy Wiseau. Anna Paquin was in studio, Anya Taylor-Joy, and the director of Thoroughbreds. I can't remember his name. They did that interview with Dave Filoni, even though it wasn't in studio. So they have all of that going on. They had extensive Oscars coverage. They put out a movie commentary, which they haven't done in a long time. They did the Thor Ragnarok commentary. It just seems to me that they are firing on all cylinders right now when it comes to creating content for the channel. Have you noticed this?
Yeah, I have. I mean, we are big champions of just casting a wide net. I mean, sometimes you're going to pull in a old man's boot, but sometimes you're going to reel in a big old swordfish. And I think it's working for the most part. I think it's pretty good. Yeah, I think they're doing a good job, and it's sort of funny because I don't remember where I heard this, but it might have been on the town hall. They mentioned something like, "Oh, there's so many different places to actually shoot video in the new studio," and I like that, and that's something that I'm very eager to see. I mean, I can totally see that when this podcast channel is launched, if there are, I expect some of these podcasts, if they're done in studio, to be done in these small little spaces like this. And there was, I'm sure we'll talk about it on Harloff and Ellis, but they got booted out of recording the show because they needed the space. And it's just like, man, they must be shooting things constantly, and they should be, right? I mean, a
Yes.
YouTube channel that has a studio should be making video content, like meetings. All right, we don't need meetings, okay? If you're gonna do a meeting, put a fucking camera in the room and let's record it, because we need to be making YouTube content constantly.
Yes.
All day, every day. That's what I would be doing if I didn't have to work my stupid day job. I would be recording YouTube video while I was taking a dump, watching other YouTube videos. That's what I would be doing.
Hell yes. Wait a minute. Did you see that wacko Lloyd Kaufman on Collider Heroes this week?
No, I missed it.
Like the guy that's ahead of the Trauma films or whatever.
Big fan of The Toxic Avenger.
Are you really?
When I was a kid, I thought it was pretty cool.
Oh, I thought you were doing your fake a take segment where you just completely like you Google searched what I was talking about while you were sitting there just so you could comment.
Little known fact, Trauma actually helped direct a Newfound Glory music video. So there you go.
Okay. Well, I wish you saw it because they were having, Heroes was going on as usual. So Snep hosting, I believe, Jay Washington and Coy Jane Drew. This was on Monday.
I haven't watched Heroes in a minute. Is Robert Meyer Burnett still on the show?
Yeah, I'm going to bring him up here in a minute. But they cut to a graphic, so the graphic comes up, and then the graphic goes away, and Coy and Jay are nowhere to be found at the table, and so they left to make room for Lloyd Coffin. So this guest just dropped in at the middle of Heroes for one segment to promote sort of what was going on, and then he left. And so basically it worked in the exact same way that the Schmoes Know live show would, where you have your opening segment and then a guest comes in for a minute and then it's back to business with the live show. It played out like that, and it was so strange to see that happen on Collider Heroes. But it did. But it goes back to my original point, how they're getting a lot of people in studio right now, and I don't know, it's pretty cool. Jay Washington was also on the Thor Ragnarok commentary, so he is he's been grinding and hustling over at Collider for sure.
Yeah, I feel like if I was to make a pool right now of the people who are going to be getting full-time gigs potentially at Collider, I think Jay Washington would be one of my front runners. I would give really good odds to him just because they're using him so much, and I appreciate that because I think he's a great personality to have. He brings like a lot more of an energetic vibe. Not that everybody walking around like zombies, so to speak. It's just a different vibe, and I appreciate that. We also got news that they hired a new social media person, which is fantastic. I think that's really cool. I hope that somebody tells him about After Schmoe, because I'm about to let him know that one thing that After Schmoe wants is we want content on social media. We don't just want regurgitated posts like, hey, I know you're subscribed to Collider and you see it in your feed that we did Movie Talk, but here's a reminder on Instagram. Like, I want to see actual legitimate content on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We've talked about this, though.
I would also like consistent promotion of After Schmoe during the weekend, like on Twitter. I would ask for that. That would probably be the first thing that I ask for. I don't know, man. Bringing up who would I want to be hired on full time first?
That's not, Jay, just to be clear, that's not what I'm saying. Not that I don't want Jay to get hired. I'm just saying that's who I would see. Okay.
Yeah, this is where I'm going with it. Jay is a big personality, but I don't connect with his takes that much, and it's sort of. I mean, that's how I felt about Jeremy.
It's more like a personal thing, though, right? Like just your all's opinions don't necessarily align.
Well, it's not necessarily opinions, because I mean there's three other voices at the table that may disagree with him there, and I might not agree with them either, but I just don't think he says a whole lot to me. And I felt that way about Jeremy. Like and Jeremy even brought it up once. He was like, "Yeah, usually when I'm the last person to talk at the table, you sort of find yourself just repeating what everyone else is saying." So I don't know if it's that, or I don't know. I don't know. I'm not connecting with him in that way, but obviously he's, tremendous for the Schmoedown, and he is a big personality. And pitting him up against people like Snep, I mean, that is it's a riot. Like that's what Jay has going for him, is that he is one of a kind. But I don't know, just the takes I don't necessarily connect with. But I think my number one vote, I guess it depends on the role, right? Like obviously I'm not predicting the next social media manager. I'm thinking about on-camera personalities. It would be Clark. Clark has been killing it on Movie Talk lately. I would love to see her come back in some way, shape, or form full time. And I don't know, maybe we will see that happen. It just depends on how this whole podcast network thing works out. Because if that happens, I think people are going to start screaming and asking for Nightmares to come back. So I don't know if that would make her full time or not. Maybe they can find some other things for her to do. But my vote is Clark. For sure.
Yeah, I would be eager to get into. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Clark would be a fantastic addition. She's fantastic as it stands right now, and everything that she's involved with and incorporated with. Especially because she's so versatile. I love how versatile she is in talking about so many different movies, and she can appear on movie talks. She can also, obviously, she has her takes and opinions on horror stuff as well. But I could easily see her. She seems like such a consummate professional that she could fit right in to Heroes if she needed to. Or I don't know what her Star Wars knowledge is like, but I'm sure if you just told her, hey, you need to sit in for Jedi Council, I'm sure she would be able to deliver. I would be eager to have a conversation with some of these people who are freelancers for this space in general, and to see if that is something that they're interested in, because we talk about it a lot, full-time employees and freelancers and part-time employees and this and that, but we know that John Roca really wanted to be a hired regular full-time employee at Collider. But I don't necessarily think that's a given in all situations and circumstances. I mean, some people who have built a career on being a freelancer, they might like that freedom. They might like that ability to float between different things, maybe not work for a particular time. If work's been really, really good, maybe they can take some time off. Maybe they can take some time for some personal projects. Being somebody that's freelanced before in the past, that's one of the benefits of it. Where it does suck is when the well sort of dries up and you are looking for work and you're waiting for people to call you. But I would be eager just to sort of tap into what their perspective on that is.
I can't remember who it was. I feel like it was Clark, but I can't find it right now. One of them is trying to produce content. Maybe I'm thinking of Tiffany. I don't know. Somebody's acting or producing. I don't know. But you're absolutely right. These people are happy with freelancing, but it's not everybody's dream to work at Collider. They have other ambitions and things like that. So all that stuff I wasn't even going to consider for the sake of our discussion, but you're absolutely right about it. Schnepp has been cracking me up. I brought it up last week, and you sent me a text yesterday. Have you seen Schnepp's review of A Wrinkle in Time?
It made me so happy. Like, now, listen, I want every movie to succeed. I don't want any movie to fail. However, when someone has such a visceral reaction to a film, regardless of what it is, it could have been Blade Runner, which was my favorite movie of last year. Even if he just absolutely birthed adamantium claws and just went ape shit, like berserker mode on this movie, I would still love it. I love it when people get just absurdly over the top frustrated with, like, especially pop culture stuff like this. Like, I just think it's fantastic.
You told me to read it in his voice, which is funny because I do that anyway. So it was great to hear that you do that too.
Oh, I don't. I just wanted you to do it.
Oh, okay. Well, I usually do.
There's only one voice inside my head.
I get excited when he rants about the DCFU on Heroes. I love when he just goes off on tangents, and he was absolutely eviscerating A Wrinkle in Time, and man, it was great. And what's weird about him is that we do find ourselves laughing at him, and I don't know. I think it's interesting because I don't necessarily take his review to heart necessarily. Like, I didn't leave his Instagram post thinking, well, that's it for A Wrinkle in Time, it must be terrible. But I just found it more comedic than anything. Whereas I might actually take Christian and Mark's reviews to heart, and they might be a deciding factor as to whether I see it or not. His was just somehow just entertaining to me, and that's what it was. But
and that's great. What you want, right? I mean, that's ultimately, and this is a fascinating thing to talk about because we take in a lot of content from pop culture reviewers across the board, music, movies, and television. And I have a special section where I put people, and I'm like, these are the people who I look to when I legitimately just want their opinions. But there are some people out there that I subscribe to because I'm legitimately entertained by whatever it is that they have to say on different levels. I'll check out somebody like John Schnepp, who I think is just hilarious because I love his character so to speak. There's people like Big Quint on YouTube who just dances around his room. Like, I'm not taking that into consideration for like his criticism when he's just getting hyped for a hip hop track. Andy Greenwald at The Watch, I sometimes I hate him. I literally can't stand him. And but I still am invested in what he has to say because he's such a smart individual and he has fantastic conversations. So that's always a really interesting thing to sort of observe.
And I would prefer when I go on YouTube and absolutely eviscerate a Parkway Drive music video, I would hope that people don't take me seriously, just take my review for what it is and not overreact and freak out on me. I would like for them to just laugh it off and go away, but no, they don't do that. So I wish everyone else in the world was like me and could take in a take like that and not get mad and just fucking relax.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. Like, I don't think I'm not telling people that they don't have the right to do this, but I've never watched a review for something that I've just outright disagreed with and felt any need to leave any sort of comment. I just wanted to let you know that I do not agree with this. I've never done that in my life.
Right. I definitely haven't done it a lot. I might have done it a little bit, but definitely not a lot. I mean, I try to comment to everything. When people comment on my videos or on After Schmoe and things like that, I will reply to all of that stuff. But when I'm taking in content, nothing gets me fired up to the point where I have to comment. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't affect me emotionally and I won't get irked by someone ripping The Last Jedi when I don't think it's deserved, but I never leave a comment and just completely blast someone in their comment section.
There are podcasts that I listen to that will talk about movies and just be ridiculously off base. I'm looking at you, Joe Rogan. I'm looking at you, Fighter and the Kid podcast. Like, they do not have knowledgeable conversations about movies. And I'm not even like the movie guy in our space, but I've never once been like, well, Joe, actually what you were talking about at minute 38 in your podcast on December 14th, you were actually incorrect. I've never done that.
Right. Lebitard, I mean, they make me cringe when they talk about movies. Yeah. That's why I would love, I don't know how I would do this. Maybe I could, honestly, maybe Fernandez could help me out with this, but I would love to get one of the Schmoes or someone at Collider. I would love for Mark Ellis, the host of Collider Movie Talk, to have a weekly segment on Lebitard or something reviewing a movie, because they try to do it with other people, but it just doesn't work because they aren't nearly as knowledgeable. And I think someone like Mark Ellis, it would be a revelation on that show. I don't know. Talk about casting a wide net. I don't know if they're interested in doing anything like that. I know Christian, as far as I know, still has a weekly slot on Heidi and Frank.
Yeah, and we just found out too, which this is sort of a side conversation that I want to have. We just found out that Mark Ellis is going down to South by Southwest to host this Rotten Tomatoes panel. Let me ask you this question. I don't know a ton about South by Southwest outside of the music stuff that goes on there. I know other things happen there. It's a big tech industry, big for films and movies and whatnot. Yeah. But should Collider have a presence? Should they be covering South by Southwest?
100%.
I agree.
There's no reason or excuse not to, but
I mean, I get why they're probably not doing it right now because of the transition and this and that, but I would think they would be down there in the future.
Well, it would be the .com, so I'm not putting it on. Mark Ellis happens to be there, but if anybody was going to go, it's Frosty. Now, I answered your question, but I'm not saying that they've never done it before, and to be honest, they might have someone down there. Adam Chitwood might be down there. I don't know, but just to answer your question, yes, 100%, but again, I don't know. I don't know that they aren't there at the same time. So,
and that's another perfect example and a perfect thing where you just take some footage, do a vlog while you're down there, right? I mean,
yes.
Listen, I get why a show like Behind the Scenes maybe had to take a back seat when it did, because you're using man hours to assemble that show. You're paying your team to edit that show and this and that, but And yeah, I get that there will be some editing that would have to be done with something like that, but a lot of the shooting and the production, I mean, you could just pick up your cell phone, man, and just start filming.
Right. And yeah, I want to be careful here. I'm not putting it on Collider Video. Like,
oh, no. Absolutely
yeah,
not.
That would be great to see. And I kind of talked about that a couple weeks ago. I talked about how cool it would be if Frosty had his own little thing that he could put out. So if he happened to be out at South by and was sort of documenting all that, I think that would be really great content. But again, there's a lot of stuff going on. I don't know if anything is preventing that from happening right now. But I know that Mark Ellis would be the last person to do something like that. I think the most he's done is like a trailer reaction from his comedy condo. But that's about it.
And I get that. I can appreciate that. It's all good.
Okay. I think... Oh, by the way, I said I was going to mention Robert Meyer Burnett. He's fire, as always. He had some fire takes on Heroes last night. We haven't talked about him in a while, but I don't... He's somebody who doesn't need to work at Collider and probably doesn't aspire to work at Collider, but I would really love for him to be full-time. That'd be fucking awesome. Oh, man.
Remember that time we went to jail?
Do what now?
Remember that time we went to jail?
No.
Did we have this conversation?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Or was it off air? There was like a time period where a handful of people kept referencing Robert Meyer Burnett having to go to jail for like being drunk and disorderly or something like that. And I could never actually confirm if they were joking or if it's something that actually...
I feel like this sounds like something that shouldn't have been brought up, but I'm really fucking...
They've talked about it on Collider before. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, they've just casually mentioned it. Like, oh, yeah, like when RMB went to the drunk tank. And it's just like people like
I think I might have remembered.
Like, what?
That. Maybe he did say he spent a night in jail or something like that. I don't know.
It's just like, what? You're just gonna drop that and just let it go? But the fact that it's just now a legend, like maybe it did happen, maybe it didn't happen, maybe it's like a Bigfoot scenario. I have no idea, but it's incredible.
The way that you worded it just now, when you explained it does sound like something that was a rumor in some Facebook post somewhere, and then Schnepp saw it and was like, hey, did you see that you were in jail this weekend? And then they sort of played it up. Like, it could have been that, but oh my God, that's great.
We'll never know.
Okay, headline news. Collider Movie Talk had a special guest this week. It was Michael Rapaport and his son, Dean. This is event television, more so for you than me.
Can we let's be a little bit transparent here.
Well, I'm about to introduce Michael Rapaport. Michael Rapaport is actually here on After Schmoe with us. Michael Rapaport, how are you doing? Okay, go ahead with your...
So, yeah, I just wanted to be a little bit transparent here with how we feel about Michael Rapaport. This man has made multiple appearances now on Movie Talk. I'm a big fan of rap. Both the music genre and Michael Rapaport. But this is massive crossover for me in so many ways because, first of all, my probably biggest exposure to him outside of just seeing him act in things, he is not only a frequent guest on probably my favorite podcast right now, Fighter and the Kid. He was their guest of the year one year. I think he was like really big into this whole Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather like situation, like arguing on behalf of Floyd Mayweather. Anyways, he also was in Atypical, which we both really, really enjoyed last year quite a bit. But I do know that he's a polarizing figure, a very, very, very polarizing figure. And I know that there are people out there who were absolutely offended that they did not get the same episode of Movie Talk that they expect every single week. And that's sort of what I want to unpack here. But first, before we get into that, give people your perspective on Michael Rapaport.
So I was pretty indifferent. I've seen him, and he was on an episode or two of Friends, and he was on Atypical, and I've never had really any opinion on him other than he's fine, and I like him in the stuff that I've seen him in. But it wasn't until it was actually an exact year ago when Rapaport sort of came up, and Jay and I were talking about him outside of, because I don't know if you guys know this, but Jay and I have conversations about things other than Collider. And this happened to be one of those instances. So what was happening, again, it was about an exact year ago. So what happens is Magic Johnson was hired to head the Lakers basketball operations. And so naturally, Dan Le Batard, I listen to him. He's on ESPN Radio. I listen to him every single day. And so when that kind of sports story came up, Le Batard was talking about it, and he made the point that Magic Johnson, as a basketball player, is unqualified to have that job. And he was even quoted as saying, like, Magic Johnson has been given every opportunity that he's had outside of the NBA based on his virtue of smile and charm. So Rapaport goes off on Le Batard, and he was like, look, Le Batard's asking why Magic should run the Lakers, but why is Le Batard's father on TV? Like, now who's qualified? It was that kind of thing. And then it blew up into this massive Twitter feud where Rapaport and all of the producers of Le Batard are going at it. Like, they are insulting the shit out of each other. It was extremely entertaining. And as this is happening in real time, and even to this day, when it comes to this particular instance, I am Team Le Batard, and I cannot get on board with how Rapaport reacted on Twitter. But I can also say that I don't need to apply that to how I feel about when he's on Collider Movie Talk. I have my own opinions, but I think Jay wanted me to sort of describe how I had that little issue with Rapaport outside of Collider. But anyway, just because I thought it was extremely irrational and sports should not be taken that seriously. Anyway, let's go back to seriously discussing Collider video.
Yeah, I think it is important, though, to sort of just lay the groundwork for what Michael Rapaport brings to the table. And listen, I think the hilarious thing about him is that we champion this idea that people should be who they are on these shows. They should not feel ashamed for their, what their opinions are and this and that. And we want them to be entertaining. But then when people actually do say what's on their mind, it seems like people want to sort of put them in a box, and it's like, I celebrate that about Michael Rapaport. It's made for some very fascinating things to take place over the years. Like, he recently just got fired. He was a part of Barstool.
Right.
His podcast was part of Barstool Sports. And he recently just got fired from there because he called their fans like jackasses or something like that, which is hilarious.
I would agree with that, but go ahead.
Anyways, so that's just kind of what you're dealing with. And I just thought it was kind of interesting to watch this show, post town hall era, for the sole fact that you have no idea. This, for all we know, could be the future of Movie Talk. It could also be a one-off. I have no idea. I mean, I would assume that it's just a one-off sort of episode. But the way it was approached was fascinating. This felt more to me, and I had the opportunity to talk to Mark Ellis a little bit about this, but the episode to me felt more like an episode of the live show, the Schmoe's No live show, than it did movie talk. And because it felt so different to me, I just started watching it through different eyes, it seemed, and I was sort of trying to pay attention to how they were sort of maneuvering it. And I think Christian was sort of trying to treat it like a podcast in one regard, kind of doing more of an interview, which I appreciate, while Mark was still trying to do movie talk as we know it while sort of navigating in and out of Rapaport, which I think that's fine too, because he's still trying to serve the audience that comes every single week.
So for some reason, it just feels like all of these people are on different pages when they shouldn't be. So let's sort of start with the why. Like, why is Rapaport there to begin with? Is it obligatory? I mean, we know that he's good buddies with Mark Fernandez. So Fernandez probably wants him on the show. I think that is a fair question for people to ask. Like, why is he actually there? Is there crossover appeal? Does his fan base come to Collider in these instances? I don't know. I would like to talk to somebody about that. Is he there because he is a disruptor? Because, by the way, the idea of having a disruptor on Collider Movie Talk, I love the idea. And anytime Rapaport is on Collider Movie Talk, you and I live text the damn thing to each other because we're constantly laughing at it. I think the issue that I have with it is that everyone is on a different page, and that shouldn't be the case to me. And so when I'm watching that, the part that I don't like about it is that Ellis seems to be doing movie talk proper. And I think Ellis gets frustrated in those instances. I could be wrong, but that's just me. That's just how I read it. And I feel for Ellis too, because Ellis wants to be able to speak and move the show along as opposed to getting caught up on particular things, like when he finds the fingerprint on the desk. But to be fair, the fingerprints on the desk bit was hilarious. And that whole back and forth was fantastic. Seeing Fernandez come in and wipe the table for him, that was all great. So what I'm saying,
let me hit the pause button for 1 second, because I want to unpack something right here. So before we go any further, when all of this stuff is going down, when I see those types of interactions and this and that works so well in the live show setting.
Right.
Why did it feel so different when it happened on Movie Talk? That's what I want to sort of get into, like the mindset of why does it feel so strange when Mark Fernandez has to come in and there's like awkward pauses when they're like, wait, what are you talking about? What's going on there?
Because I think I feel Ellis's frustration, and I think I get a sense that the audiences aren't the same. There's a particular audience, there might be some crossover, but there's an audience, they know what they're getting when they sign up for the Schmoe's No live show. But is that what makes it special? That's sort of my question. What do you mean?
So one of the reasons why we live text each other and why we have this holy shit, I can't believe this is happening right now when Rapaport's on there, is because these types of things usually don't happen on Movie Talk every week.
It's an amusement ride when this happens.
If it was on the live show, it would sort of be par for the course, right? I don't know if we would have that, because we know when Michael Rapaport steps onto that set, we know that it is just going to be, you never have any idea what's going to happen.
Right.
And I think because it's happening on the buttoned up version of Movie Talk, I mean, to me, that it's the flagship show. It seems more buttoned up to me, more streamlined. That's sort of what makes it so fun to watch in a weird way.
Yeah. I'm not saying that Ellis is in the wrong, by the way. I guess what I'm asking, because I don't want to be confusing, I think what I'm saying is it just feels like there's a disconnect there, and everyone needs to make sure that they're on the same page. And actually the other question that I have is, the person that sits down to watch movie talk every single day, whether Rapaport is polarizing or not, the idea of someone coming in and not caring or knowing about Star Wars and Marvel, I would argue is needed to sort of burst the bubble, if you will. But I get Movie Talk's audience. They turn on Movie Talk. They're not necessarily looking for that. Like, they want all four people at the table to have varying views of Star Wars when it comes to whether Favreau working on it is good or bad, but they don't want one person sitting in a chair that doesn't even know anything about Favreau doing the project at all and has nothing to say about it. So I think that's why people get frustrated. And the people that are just mad at his personality in general, I don't care about, because I like the fact that Movie Talk feels different when he's on. I like him being a disruptor. I like him just cracking people up around him because, again, going back to the amusement ride. So I guess ultimately what I'm asking, so I don't want to confuse anybody, I would just ask that either Ellis or everybody else get on the same page with what's about to happen, or just relax and let it happen, and just for that one day have Movie Talk feel different, because it felt like Christian was on board with what Rapaport was doing, and Rapaport, it was 2 versus 2 in a way, because Rapaport and Dean, even though Dean did a great job and he was contributing to the conversation, but him and Rapaport still had their back and forths, right? So you run the risk of Ellis isolating himself if he isn't willing to play ball. So I'm not saying that Ellis is in the wrong in any way. Ellis knows that he has an obligation to the fan base, and that's why it's such a conflicting it's just such a conflicting instance for him as the host of that show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think a few interesting things happen. I think one, Collider needs a space to accommodate this in a better way, and maybe it is the Schmoedown live show. I don't know. But just in a way where things can get a little bit unhinged, things can go off the rails. I mean, the only thing that I think that's really ever existed like that, TV Talk was kind of like that. Heroes can be like that to a certain extent. But even those feel a little bit more buttoned up to a certain extent. I also think it's fascinating that at one point it seems like everybody ended up getting on the same page. Like everybody sort of was just like, all right, we're just not gonna do what we know here.
Ellis, the back and forth that Ellis and Rapaport had was funny, because it feels like Ellis sort of this switch flips in his head where it looks like he's dealing with a heckler on stage. Like, it feels like he's trying to do stand-up. This person is heckling him, and if he wants to, he will just turn around, look at Rapaport, and start roasting him. Like, that's what it feels like to me, and I love that, and it's fascinating, but I just think it's a lose-lose scenario. Well, I mean, going back to my original point, I think it's fair to ask, why is Rapaport there in the first place? Like, just so we're clear, but it's just so weird, and I don't want it. Again, it's an interesting thing to talk about. Going even here, me and you going back and forth on this. I don't want it to sound like I'm picking at Ellis or I don't know. It's just such a weird, conflicting place to be. I don't know.
Well, I think we're kind of just breaking it down, like I said, just the fine details of it. And listen, I think it's, again, like I said at the very beginning of this whole conversation, I just think it's interesting, and I think it's interesting to see what we can take away from this for the future, and what we can take away from this from the present. The other thing that I noticed about this whole conversation that sort of came up out of nowhere, the conversation that they ended up having towards the end, where they talked a little bit about Rapaport's acting career, and he was going through some of his influences, Tony Scott and this and that. These are conversations that on Collider, this movie YouTube channel, we don't get a lot of those.
Right.
We don't get a lot of everything is so dependent on current events that we rarely do get to sort of expand upon things like that. And I'm wondering if maybe some of the more diehard movie fans that are, cinephiles, movie purists, and this and that, they really did get something out of that conversation, because I do think that there is a space inside of Collider that is sort of missing that type of conversation. It is just so fascinating that we got it on this particular episode of Movie Talk where things were just supposed to go out the window and the whole show was supposed to go off the rails, that we actually got that here.
Yeah, I did really value that discussion. I thought it was great. I'd like to end on, this is sort of my final point, I guess. It is great content, but when I watch it, I don't think everybody's always having fun with it. So I just want to make sure that it's some shape or form they kind of figure that out, because I can't imagine this is his last appearance on the show. But
yeah,
I don't know. But you're right.
Well, I'm enjoying it. I have fun with it.
Yeah,
when
it's
I
great
watch
content. It's great content. But you get what I'm saying, though, right? Like, do you feel the frustration a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know what side of the fence I sit on. Like, and this is sort of what I was trying to talk to Ellis about a little bit when I was asking him about it. Does he feel the pressure to deliver an episode of Movie Talk that fans expect? I don't care either way, because that's just me. It's just a thing at the end of the day. It was just something that I turned on. I get both sides. That's what I'm trying to express, and hopefully that point is coming across. Yeah. But it's like, well, and you're exploring both sides.
Yeah,
I think,
but ultimately it's like, I don't know. I just feel like it's a lose-lose. I feel like you have to give in, and it sucks, because I hate that. I've been frustrated hosting particulars. There are episodes of After Schmoe where I've been frustrated because the guest isn't doing what I'm wanting, but ultimately...
I'm so sorry.
You did bring up a great point, though. The fact that they sort of could open up the conversation a little bit. And I even put it in my notes, and I texted you about it off air. I was like, the fact that Looper and Minority Report were brought up, like, movies don't just get brought up and are talked about like that. And those are two of my favorite movies of all time. So I thought it was cool that they were able to have that kind of conversation. But
I will say that I don't necessarily know if the viewership track record supports a show like that. I mean, if you look just in the history of shows that just, they've tried, maybe not even necessarily shows, but just video content that they've tried before, there are some lower profile interviews they've done in the past that haven't really popped. You look at a show like Top 10 that obviously ended up being canceled. And even some of their just like more indie movie reviews, the types of content that I'm speaking about that a certain sort of section of fans would be interested in hearing about. Unfortunately, I don't know if the channel has had a track record of being able to support content like that. Right. By their own standards, of course.
Anyway, the last thing I want to mention when it comes to Movie Talk, the day that we're recording this, it's Thursday. It was International Women's Day, so the panel highlighted some of Collider's best. It was Perry, T, Emma, and Wendy. And it was great to see Wendy. I feel like I haven't seen her in a while. T was on recently, and I don't remember the last time Emma Fife was on Movie Talk. I don't know if she ever has been on Movie Talk. Now that I think about it, she was a regular on TV Talk there at the end, but I don't know. But yeah. That was great to see, and I'm glad that they celebrated that. Yeah, I think they were disappointed because they had to talk about Jon Favreau doing Star Wars all day. But that aside, stories aside, it was great to see them do an episode highlighting the brilliant women that work over at Collider. So props to them. Great job, ladies. Let's see. I think that's pretty much all I got really on the Collider side of things. Did you have anything else?
That's pretty much it, man. We got you were skeptical about getting a Harloff and Ellis this week.
Yeah, because it came out at like 10 p.m. again.
Later than that, man. It was like closer to midnight. our time.
I think what they did, I think they were at a screening and then they came back and filmed Tarloff and Ellis and their movie reviews at the same time because whatever movie review came, it was Wrinkle in Time and maybe another one. They were wearing the same thing, so I guess that's what they did. But yeah, how do you want to do Harloff and Ellis?
What do you mean?
Well, it's late. You said you had till about 12:30. It's 12:36. Do you want to just do the stream of consciousness notes and then head out? Or?
Well, there are no stream of consciousness notes. I don't do that anymore until the live show comes back.
Okay.
What I will say about this episode is that I appreciate annoyed Ellis, like at the top of all of these shows where he's just like getting super frustrated with Christian. I think it's hilarious to watch. Other than that, man, I mean, it was sort of just a discussion about life again, which I appreciate. It's like Christian said, I think both of them said it, that they need a show like this to exist. They need to be able just to talk about whatever they want. Obviously, they touched on some of the town hall stuff, and Ellis reiterated something that he talked about with me the other day, where he said he was sort of wondering or worrying whether or not the town hall was entertaining, because he didn't know if he was supposed to be entertaining or not, or if he was supposed to have it be sort of, more straight-laced and straightforward. But I thought he did a fantastic job. We already talked about that, but I don't think he had anything to really feel self-conscious for.
Do you know why you love seeing Ellis get frustrated with Christian?
Because I get frustrated with you sometimes?
Exactly.
Of course. I can relate to
it. Well, I can too. It's not just you. Jesus Christ.
You know what's the worst?
What?
When somebody just out of nowhere just says stuff like, "You're doing it again." And it's like, I don't even know what you're referencing.
I said that last week.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why it hurts. It stings. It's just like, oh, you mean existing?
I didn't say that to you. I said it about people bringing up Campia.
I know.
Oh.
I know. You're doing it again.
Jay, you're doing it again. I want to see Christian.
I quit.
I want to see Christian rip Joel Osteen some more. I want more of that. There was a little bit of it. There was a spark of him putting Joel Osteen on blast. I want to see him do more of that. That would be great. That would be sort of like a callback to him going on just extensive rants. You typically on trolls, but if there's anybody like Joel Osteen or anybody that irritates him out there in the world, I would love to see him get really, really pissed. I haven't seen that in a while. Christian does not. I stand by what I've said on this show. He does not support Ellis's humor. Like, I think there was one time where he gave him credit for a joke that killed either in the Schmoedown Spectacular or on the Schmoedown Awards.
Yeah.
But and he called him out for. I'd never see Christian support Ellis's humor. I just don't. To this day, how do I talk to Mark Riley about co-writing my screenplay?
I'd say you probably just DM him on Twitter or however you would normally get in touch with him. Don't you have his email address?
I can call him if I want.
There you go. So why the hell are you asking me? I've never spoken one word to him.
I don't know. I'm self-conscious about it. I feel like he yelled at me. Snelling, what makes you think I want to do this? Mark Riley, if you're listening, I have an idea. I'd love to co-write it with you for Collider Studios or whatever the hell the production company's gonna be. Oh man, the BFG blows ass, and that's pretty much all I got for notes when it comes to, the whole discussion with the pets. I think all of those people are out of their minds if they wouldn't sell. Like, okay, I get it. I love Cal the Schmoe dog. That's all great. I love Dewey the cat. All of you are being ridiculous. If you can comfortably say that you wouldn't sell your pet for $400 million, I just don't care for that. I think you're out of your minds. I would sell my pet for a lot less money than that. Jesus Christ.
You also don't have a pet, so there's that too. However, Indy, he's gone. Get him the fuck out of here.
What's the low? Indy is Jay's dog. He doesn't have back hair because he has a thyroid condition. I think Jay's neighbors think that Jay is some kind of pyro that burned all of his dog's hair off. I'm surprised that the cops have not been called.
It's just a thing.
What's the lowest dollar amount that you would sell Indy, the dog, with a thyroid problem?
$500.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, same question.
Daddy needs a new studio.
Same question, but let's apply it to your girlfriend's much better dog, Dolly.
It's not mine to sell.
What dollar amount would cause you to sit Kayla down and be like, look, we have no choice but to sell this dog. We're going to get this amount of money. What amount of money would cause you to sit her down and talk to her about it?
$5,000.
You went lower than I thought, but I understand your thought process more than I do Riley and Perry's.
Well, I mean, listen, it's much easier to do it when it's not yours for the sole fact you just sit them down and it's like, hey, listen, there's $5,000 on the table right now. Like, would you entertain this at all? If the answer is no, then it's no. There's nothing I can do about that. But if the answer is yeah, then I'm like, okay, that's cool.
I've had dogs. I know what it feels like to be in love with your pet, but the offer is hundreds of millions of dollars.
I would sell Ryan Snelling for $500. Actually, less than that. $250. Or if you just want to buy a shirt on sitesoundpod.com, that's fine too.
I just want to make it clear that the BFG blows ass. Oh, and I'm also disappointed in Roca and Dennis talking about fixing the Oscars. They didn't bring up at all the distribution of those films, which is the biggest problem that the Oscars has going for it. The fact that the Oscars have already happened and they've crowned the best picture of the year, and I can't even watch I, Tonya for another 4 days, that's absurd. And there's no excuse for that. You have Annihilation coming out on Netflix 2 weeks
That's
after.
Enough. We've had enough of this.
For more on that topic, check out Sight and Sound. I did a video on it. The Oscars are broken. I do a lot of videos like that. I also do a lot of podcasts. Jay and I are getting ready for Legion Season 2. We host a show called Let's Talk Legion. It's distributed by our friends at the TV Time app. They are tremendous supporters of Jay and myself and everything that we do at Sight and Sound. Sight and Sound is your new favorite pop culture companion. We put out concentrated music shows every Friday, hosted by Jaye Williams. We put out movie shows, TV recaps, and our weekly flagship show is out on our podcast feed and the SK Plus YouTube channel every single Monday. We tackle one topic in music, movies, and television. We would love to see you in the Sight and Sound Facebook group. Come hang out with us. I'm Ryan Snelling. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell. Jaye Williams, take us out.
My name is Jaye Williams. I do some things. You can find me by looking at the thumbnail.
Very good. See ya.